I'm Mike Cagney. This is the brUTE Shoot, the brUTE Strength Training Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Drew Canavero.
Hello.
San Fran Fire athlete, great editor, journalist.
Oh, God, you're being way too generous. Just stop with San Francisco Fire athlete and editor.
Doctor, attorney at law.
Doctor, Esquire, MD, PhD, ASPCA,
TDS.
PDA, DNA. Let's move on to
shit.
the important person.
And we are in the company of Krissy Cagney. She has a long list of aspirations. Aspirations? Not aspirations.
Well, she has
accolades.
Accolades, yeah.
Accolades.
Not least of which is being the most recent Wu-Tang girl.
Yes. Today she was featured on Wu-Tang Clan's Instagram or
Official
Facebook page.
Facebook
Official Facebook page. That's what my life has come to.
Life is complete.
That's validation. That is a stamp of approval.
I've arrived.
You have.
Successful author, nutritionist, powerlifter, bodybuilder, fitness. Retired bodybuilder.
I wasn't very good at
Still
it,
looking the part.
That body looks built.
Yeah.
That body looks built. It looks good. Let's just say she retired, but she retired at the top.
That's damn right.
That's all right.
Goddamn right. Anyway, she is an amazing person. I've only known her for a couple of months, and I've seen what is most important to her in her life, and we share some similarities in that we are both recovering addicts, and she is proud to represent that community, and she works very hard at keeping herself on track and living a very whole, fulfilling life. And I think that is incredibly inspiring considering all that she has and is continuing to do.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
You guys are so sweet to me.
And for anyone who may be listening or maybe watching this, we should clear up one point now that Krissy May is my girlfriend, is my better half. So if you were expecting any type of impartiality, we'll do our best. As Mike said earlier, I am a well-respected journalist. So as a well-respected journalist, it behooves me to maintain some type of professional distance between myself and my emotions or the feelings I may otherwise have for the person I'm interviewing. So I just want to reassure everyone that the line of questioning will be fair, will be uncompromising, and I will likely pay for it later, off camera and off air.
And now, you explained this to me earlier, but just for our viewers, when is it okay to shit where you eat?
Dip your pen in the company ink is more appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to dipping and shitting, and
we give you the floor.
And both usually follow the same rules of conduct. I feel like exceptions can be made in this case, where I dip and shit regularly, where I eat and ink. Is that when? Okay, now you're just throwing me off track. I don't know, dipping and inking, all this stuff. I think when the person who I'm dipping, when her ink is of such tremendous quality, and when my combinations, when the commode itself is just it's like, wow, this is a beautiful shitter. I think so, yeah. Like, I mean, look at her. She's gorgeous. She's intelligent. So I feel like I have a green light. I have an obligation almost to shit and dip with impunity. So charming. Let that be my final statement on the matter is if you have a top 10 dime, if you got yourself just a ride or die woman, beautiful, smart,
real quick.
Feel free to just poop and dip all you want. Dip, poop again, dip, poop again, and just make sure.
If you're watching this, I invite you to pause the video, write down what you heard, and then resume.
And take it completely out of context, which will be fun for everyone involved. So enough dipping, enough pooping, enough flattery. Because again, I have to maintain that professional distance.
Right.
If I want to get that Pulitzer, right? I think I'm up for one. Let's get into the meaty stuff.
Okay, so what I first came to know you as an author, and your first book was Flexible Dieting 1, right? Can you tell us and the viewers, listeners, a little bit? So first off, what does that term mean?
Flexible dieting is exactly what it sounds like. It's being flexible. I think that people see the word diet and immediately assume going on a diet or being restricted with their food, forgetting to realize that your diet's just your own personal way of eating.
Everyone's on a diet.
Right. At all times. You have a diet. You're never really on a diet.
Yeah.
That's true. It's a donut.
Mm-hmm.
So I started flexible dieting, meaning, and when I first started flexible dieting, it was tracking macros. And flexible dieting isn't necessarily tracking macros. Flexible dieting is what it is to the person eating. So with me at first, I was a very rigid flexible dieter, which isn't flexible at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I very strictly tracked my macros, and I felt like I had to hit them dead on every single day. So when I wrote that first book, it was more along the lines of trying to kind of defend my way of eating. It was very defensive. It was kind of condescending in a way, and it was very strict. It wasn't flexible. It was telling people, calculate your macros, hit them no matter what every single day, and it's okay to eat junk food occasionally. And it made sense to me when I wrote it, and it sold a ton of copies. And when I started working specifically with athletes, around August of last year, I kind of realized that it needed to be rewritten and better written, so I rewrote it.
First, it's interesting you talk about it from the athletic standpoint, because for athletes, there's no way to tell how their body is going to respond to training, right?
Right.
So it has to be flexible, and if you're putting a number on it, it's kind of like you just sending out a generic program and there being no follow-up whatsoever.
Right.
It maybe works better than nothing, but it's not going to be the best thing for them. The body is always changing, right? Is that kind of along
and
the
that's
same
kind of
context?
like, that's what's really awesome about flexible dieting is it allows, the flexibility comes hand in hand with the training. So as your training volume increases, your diet's flexible enough so that you know how to properly handle that, and you eat more when your training volume increases, you eat less when your training volume decreases. So that's what's awesome, is it's just as flexible as a training program is.
Right.
If you know what you're doing, you can recalculate anytime.
How does this utilize stuff like carb cycling?
Carb cycling gets a little bit more advanced. I don't really let anybody start incorporating carb cycling into their diets until they really nail down the importance of protein, carbs, and fats, and when to eat them, nutrient timing, making sure they hit their calories for the day first and foremost. Because I don't like giving people, if people can't hit one set of numbers, what's the point of giving them multiple sets of numbers? So carb cycling is great for athletes, awesome for athletes. So on a lot of CrossFit Games athletes, powerlifters, anybody that's competitive often trains twice a day. So on your 2-a-day training days, your more demanding training days, you increase your carbs by 20 to 25%. And on your rest days, you would decrease by 20 to 25%.
Okay.
So that's basically all it is. I think people really overcomplicate carb cycling when if you just increase and decrease accordingly to make sure it all evens out at the end.
Right. I read something in your book about even before the adding and subtracting, why not just hit your basic macros first? Because in the end, you end up eating the same amount throughout the week, throughout the month.
Right. It all evens out, and that's the whole point. Is I think people focus too much on the day, and people want to focus day by day. But when you start looking at things over the course of a week, and you look at how many calories or like how big your decrease was over the course of the week, or your surplus over the course of the week, that's when you start seeing the changes, and eventually those weeks add up to months. So when people get really hard on themselves for going 200 calories over one day, in the big picture, it's not going to mean much, especially there's going to be some days where you're under a little bit. Right. There's times when I get like the end of the day and I've only eaten 1,000 calories, and I get home and I've got 1,500 more calories to eat. And I know there's no way it's happening. So I just eat until I'm full. I don't, well, sometimes I really stuff myself right to the brim. True can vouch.
Like,
That's right. So rather than me panicking about trying to get in all these calories, I say, all right, I'm not going to stuff myself full tonight. I'm going to eat till I'm full, and then I'm under a little bit, but it's almost guaranteed at some point in the week I'm going to be over one day.
Right.
So that's being flexible rather than it used to be where if I was 5 grams short on fat at the end of the night, I would take like fish oil pills, and that's just super extreme and super rigid and not healthy. So I just try to look for balance over the course of the week. Some days, and then there's some days where I choose to train a little bit more, train a little bit less. But over the course of the week, the whole point is to be flexible enough so that it balances out. You
Right.
like it.
I think what I've noticed with, I think macro is an appropriate term. We're looking at dietary choices made in a macro scale, not a micro scale. We're looking at good decisions made over a period of time that aggregate. And I think, the pitfalls that Krissy described, and even kind of that more orthorexic, really rigid way of thinking, where if you're 15 grams under fat at the end of the night, you're taking fish oil capsules. That's not particularly, so that's kind of contrary to the rules or the recommendations of flexible dieting. We tend to have it, and this is no less true with regards to how people look at their training, is they tend to become really pixelated. They tend to become really narrow. They look at one single day, and they look at either the success or the perceived shortcomings of that day with regards to their training, and then begin to, work inductively from that, where they begin to make these huge inaccurate extrapolations about the consequences of that one day. When it really comes down to, well, what are your decisions over the course of a week, a month,
Right.
several months? If I miss a training day, there is an acute stress that occurs. Like, okay, well, I'm a little stressed out. I'm disappointed that I missed that training day. But that one missed training day, or that bad training day, over the course of several months, a month, or
You're not going to remember it.
I'm not going to remember it, and it's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to derail my progress, but only if I continue to subscribe to that really pixelated, narrow way of thinking. If I let one bad training day compound itself. And I think, having spent so much time with Krissy, I think that's the difference in terms of the tenor and tone from flexible dieting 1 to the most recent is, this isn't something that, it's not a license to eat like garbage, like shit all the time.
Not at all.
And nor is it meant to be something that you're shackled to.
Right.
And I think that's, I would, not to take anything away from her, I think that's something probably best to hear from her, but just kind of, what fueled that evolution from FD1 to FD2.
Another thing is, so when the first flexible dieting book came out, I mean, it was just like 30 pages. It was very small. What was that? It was very small, and it was written for my clients who needed a more thorough look into flexible dieting than what I could respond to emails with. And it was also to help with my email volume. I was getting so many emails from so many people curious about flexible dieting because they saw the physical changes in a lot of my clients. So when I wrote the first one, I had a couple clients that lost a dramatic amount of weight, and I shared their progress on Instagram and Facebook, and that cued a whole line of women curious about flexible dieting to lose weight. So when I wrote the first one, I knew my main demographic, my biggest demographic was somewhat overweight women who needed to lose weight. And when I wrote it, I had that in mind. Obviously, I did include eating at maintenance and all that. So then what kind of started to happen is I was doing a lot of seminars at CrossFit gyms, and people were starting to become interested in eating for performance, and flexible dieting is great for that. Because your eating does need to change with your training plan. And the other thing about athletes is if you take into account an athlete's training volume, level of activity, body weight, every athlete needs something individual. There's not just one diet that just works for every single athlete out there. So the good thing about flexible dieting is it's very particular to the individual, and you determine your maintenance calories based off your current body weight and your lifestyle multiplier, and that gives you calories, and then from there you can kind of go in and break it up based on your training and your goals. So the first book was definitely written for that demographic. And what started to happen is more and more athletes were getting interested in it. A couple NFL players were sort of interested in what I was doing. And then actually I got an email from Miss Nicole Caperso, who used flexible dieting to lean out, and it just increased her performance like crazy. And so from there, I started doing all the research and everything involving flexible dieting for athletes. Mm-hmm. So with athletes, the difference, or people that not even like, when I say an athlete, I'm not even talking about somebody that gets paid to compete, or that's their main source of income, their profession or anything like that.
Someone who works hard in the
right.
gym or the field. Or
and what's happened with CrossFit and now the sport of powerlifting and now Olympic weightlifting, all these performance and strength sports. What is that?
Sorry.
Oh, all these performance and strength sports are becoming really popular, and people are starting to realize that, training for aesthetics isn't the only way to look aesthetically pleasing. Whereas if you're training in any strength and conditioning
mm-hmm.
sport, your body, the way you look physically, your body's a byproduct of your training,
right.
and your training is a byproduct of your nutrition. So I think people have really started to realize that. I think despite any issues I've had with CrossFit in the past, which I've had a few, I used to say some not nice things about CrossFit. I think now a lot of things have changed, and I think if anything, it's really inspired women to get strong, and I think it's awesome. So there's been a huge transition recently from people kind of getting out of that aesthetic bodybuilding world into flexible dieting. So the good thing about removing yourself from training and eating for aesthetics and switching over to training and eating for performance is it doesn't demand perfection. Whereas with bodybuilding, if you're training to get on a stage, it demands extreme precision.
Third time's a charm.
Precision with your nutrition and your training. There's no wiggle room. You need
right.
to be doing the exact amount of volume. You need to be eating the exact amount of food, and you have to be strict. You can't really be flexible
right.
with as a competitive or professional bodybuilder or aesthetic
right.
athlete. Whereas with performance, you don't need to be so strict, which is why flexible dieting's awesome for performance.
Right.
It's about figuring out your needs. And another thing is I think when people want to lose weight, like you can still lose weight as a performance athlete. You want to be eating as much as possible and still seeing results. And so flexible dieting really teaches you how to determine that and go about doing that.
I think that's one of the biggest problems, especially CrossFit athletes make, because there is such this, pressure, but it's kind of a culture of the paleo diet, and it's, you have to eat a large volume in terms of like weight of food to get enough calories. You can only eat so many carrots, broccoli, etc. Right, and it can be very hard. And I tried to be strict when I was competing and stuff like that. And I really couldn't. I don't know if I was ever able to get quite enough when I was training 4 hours a day on average without adding in stuff like rice,
right.
The occasional wheat, ice cream a lot.
So paleo.
Yeah.
And another thing I think people get confused on is I have no issues with paleo. There is nothing wrong with eating paleo at all whatsoever. Paleo is a phenomenal way to eat if you need to lose weight. A high-fat, high-protein, lower-carb diet works really well for people with a lot of weight to lose who aren't very active, and it's awesome for your health. If you're an athlete and you train, you need carbohydrates, and a high-fat, low-carb diet is not optimal at all whatsoever. And
I think it is possible, and this is what I love about your book. So let me take it in parts. So it has a psychological toll on you because you have to really think about it. If you're going to eat, 2-3 sweet potatoes or butternut squash or whatever the highest, paleo-friendly carbohydrate is, you have to plan ahead. It can be boring, and both of those things, it takes willpower. And I think about willpower as like kind of like a pie. Like you only have so much, and so if you're spending a large amount of your willpower on your nutrition, then less is available for training, for relationships, etc., etc. And in your book, do you want to say anything about that first?
No, keep going.
Okay.
You're on a roll, man.
Yeah. So I see kind of the theme is just flexibility in general, and it really spoke to me as kind of a theme for really my entire life. And one quote in particular got me, It says anything. I think it's anything
that doesn't bend.
That does not bend will break.
Right.
And that's just spot on. You know, whether it be like strict religion or, well, maybe I shouldn't even go there.
You open that can
Maybe I
of
shouldn't
worms.
even go there.
You open that can of worms.
I mean, you know, it's really easy to talk about diet. Strict dieting works really, really well for the people that are able to do it.
Right.
Matt Bruce has eaten a piece of toast or 2 pieces of toast and 2 eggs for the last, he's nearing 30 years. He's done that for 18 of those years every single day, right? And that's not an issue. He's just that type of person. But there are only 130 people like that on the entire planet, right? So most people are just not going to be able to do that. They can do that for a small amount of time, and then what happens? Right. Usually, they go right back to where they started. So this is just like, this is a way to incorporate any diet into your life.
Exactly,
right?
And that's another thing is people think flexible dieting is if it fits your macros, and it's just, eat as much crap as possible and then eat some healthy stuff too. Right. And that's not what it is. It's about determining what's optimal and what's ideal for you. There are still foods I don't care to eat. There's still foods I have issues with. I don't have any like strict restrictions. But does that make sense? Let's go with it.
I like how we look at me as if I'm somehow like the referee.
I don't have any. Well, that was just super.
You're in the line. In the line.
Okay.
In the line. We'll give
so
you 15
I don't strictly restrict myself from eating anything. I am careful about how much I eat of certain things. I don't restrict myself of processed foods, but I am careful about how much of them I eat.
She has had none of my donut.
I have had none of your donut. You are correct.
Donut.
But I did have donuts earlier.
Yes.
So another thing about me is I have a skin allergy to gluten. So when I eat too much gluten, my skin breaks out and I get kind of this weird rashy, hivey thing going around my jawline. And that sucks. It looks like I have severe acne and I hate it. So I have to be really careful about my gluten intake if I want my skin to look good. So the times I start eating more gluten or anything processed, I notice it in my skin.
Right. And
so that's when I know pump the brakes. So what I've been doing recently is try not to even get to that point by being careful, but I'm never going to just completely restrict myself of something I love, like donuts. So I just know to be careful about it and keep everything in moderation, which is exactly what flexible dieting is all about. Balance and moderation.
Love it. Did you want to say something?
Go for it.
Going into kind of our mutual experience with drug addiction.
Right.
Do you see that aiding or playing a role in your recovery, kind of that theme, that mentality?
Being flexible or moderation and stuff like that? Well, one thing this is kind of interesting that you mentioned that, and this isn't really answering your question, this is just leading into something else. Drew and I had a conversation, remember down in Long Beach that night?
I do remember that conversation.
So, a really big criticism of flexible, and not so much flexible anymore, so kind of if it fits your macros, is obsessive and unhealthy and addictive behavior with food and tracking macros.
The weighing and measuring.
The weighing and the measuring, it can get obsessive, and anyone that has an addictive personality, I've seen people get addicted to tracking I've seen some really unhealthy behaviors, so that's something Drew and I kind of talked about. And actually when Drew and I had that conversation was right around the time that I wanted to rewrite this book. And that conversation kind of started this whole process of rewriting the book and kind of trying to change the mindset about flexible dieting into not being so obsessive in the weighing and the tracking and being more flexible, which is exactly what it's designed to do. As far as balance and moderation in my life, I'm a very extreme person. Obviously, you can tell by looking at me. I'm very extreme. I've never been good at balancing or moderating anything. When I quit drinking, it was just quit cold turkey.
Right.
Completely. There was no dabbling with anything ever. So I think for me personally, I think being able to balance and manage my life has really helped my sobriety recently, because what I start to do is I will start working way, way, way too much and forget about my relationships, or vice versa. Or I'll get so enthralled in my relationships, I'll kind of quit working and fall back. So I think when everything is balanced in my life and I'm giving everything equal attention and I'm doing what I say I'm going to do and I'm not taking on too much, my sobriety gets a hell of a lot easier. when I start falling behind on work because I'm fucking around too much or I'm working way too much and forgetting to enjoy my life, I notice that old behaviors kind of start happening again, not like drinking or anything, but behaviors that are associated with alcoholism and addiction.
Right.
So definitely, I think balance is super important in all areas of my life personally.
I remember I like to accompany Krissy to AA meetings pretty regularly. And I remember at one of the more recent ones we attended, one of the people who spoke that even talked about how alcoholics, addicts have a really bad accounting.
Yep, we're creative counters.
Yeah, they have a really skewed sense of scale of balance, and whether you're talking about finances, whether you're talking about assessing risk, whether you're talking about in quantitative or qualitative terms about balance,
right?
It tends to with an alcoholic, it tends to, as Krissy said, fall at those extremes. And with flexible dieting, if you have a compulsive or addictive personality, flexible dieting, if you're just looking at the weighing and tracking dimension of it, can just you can readily substitute one compulsion for another compulsion. Mm-hmm. So it can easily become this people become fixated on hitting their macros perfectly on target every day, which, as we talked about earlier, is just a really it's not tenable in the long term. It can actually become a really bad outlet and not a not conducive to living a sober life.
People are so funny about food because there is no area in our lives that we demand perfection from ourselves in every single little thing we do. We can say, like, when I was still in school, like, oh, I'm going to put my a little bit of homework off till tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Everyone does that constantly. Oh, I'm going to put the reading off till tomorrow. Anything with our careers or work. Oh, we can put stuff off here. That stuff doesn't have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm going to skip those last couple reps. Or, oh, I'm going to do a little bit more today with my training, even though it's not programmed where I'm supposed to. And people, with everything they do, we don't demand a lot of perfection from ourselves. Even people who are perfectionists don't demand it from themselves. So it's so strange to me on why we demand it with food. Whether you're on a strict meal plan or whether you're eating zone or you're eating strict paleo, there's something about nutrition and food where we're so hard on ourselves to be perfect 100% of the time. We don't do that in any other areas of our lives.
Yeah, I think the magazines get us all.
Totally. And people think that I understand that nutrition is the most important aspect to looking the way we want to look and feeling the way we want to feel. But people are so hard on themselves about it, and people think, like this perfect 1,500 calorie meal plan out of Shape magazine is going to get me the results I want and get me to where I want to be. And then they're miserable for the 5 days. They survive it, and then they fall off hard, and then they hate themselves, and then they understand, and they're like, right, I'm going to try again, I mean it this time. I scroll through my Instagram feed. I rarely do anymore, but when I do, almost every single post is from women, particularly, is about food, and it's saying, like, oh, I'm going to be good this week, or, cheat meal. I hate the word cheat. And it's just like, it's all so disoriented and unhealthy.
Yeah, I love where you talk about the hamburger and french fries in your second book.
Yeah.
That there's value to everything, right?
Right. And that's, people say, like, if you take a meal of, even like using a chicken sandwich, let's say you have a chicken and a chicken.
Let's say you have a chicken.
Not fed. No, not fed.
So you have a live chicken right in front of you, and never mind.
It's about to get real.
So, let's say you have a chicken breast, and you have some vegetables, and you have potatoes on your plate. That's a pretty healthy, well-rounded meal for most people. But then you decide to put the chicken breast. Where is my mind?
I saw a glimmer when you said breast, and I knew that at some point this was going to become sexualized. Chicken butt. Continue.
So you put your breast of chicken on a bun, and you deep fry the potatoes, and you put the, you know what I mean? Next thing you have a chicken sandwich and french fries. It doesn't remove the value of anything else that's on that sandwich. You just added more calories.
Right.
For some people that works, but if you don't need more calories, you just need to make the right choices. And it's so funny to me how people can literally look at a hamburger and say, there's no nutritional value in that. Well, there's plenty of nutritional value in the meat and the vegetables that are on the hamburger, and the bun is simply just carbs, and cheese is, fat and protein. It's just, people are so strange about looking at something and saying, oh, that's not healthy.
Right.
And the other thing is the word, empty calories. People who say to me, oh, you eat donuts, that's empty calories. No, I eat 300 grams of carbs a day, and I need to eat donuts to ingest that many grams of carbs. So no, a donut is not empty calories to me. In order to eat the volume that I need to eat, a donut can be extremely beneficial to me to get those extra carbs and fats in before or after I train. So
that's not poison going into your body?
Donuts?
Yeah.
I mean, when you break down what they're made out of, there's sugar in there, but like I said before, you get the wheat in there, it depends what they're made up of, but even take like some of the donut shops we go to locally, there's donuts, like they have spud nuts, they make them out of potato flour, a lot of the places in New York they get all their ingredients from like local growers. The other funny thing is that when you make a donut fresh, it's no good by the end of the day because it is fresh ingredients. They throw them out. A Quest bar sits in a fucking wrapper for how long? For our protein bars that we eat, and people say, "Oh, this is this protein bar is healthy."
I think it's like bourbon. I think to actually call it a Quest bar, it has to age for at least 2 years.
So, yeah, and that's what's so funny to me is,
that's it.
These are fresh.
1908 Quest bar.
1908.
And it's so funny to me how people say like, this is a freshly baked pastry that was made from all local ingredients that was made this morning and is not processed in any way at all whatsoever. But these are the same people who smash three Quest bars, or not. I like Quest bars. I should just say protein bars. Yeah. Sorry, Quest, I love you. 3 protein bars.
They are tasty, especially the 1908.
Yes.
And so that's what's so funny to me is people, like the term empty calories gets thrown around, or it's just
it's carbohydrates, and that it has carbohydrates in it.
What does the
I'm
donut?
talking, a donut specifically.
Donut.
How can a calorie that has a specific value, a single kilocalorie raises a specific volume of water by 1 degree.
Yeah.
It has a specific value, so that
it's not empty.
It cannot be empty. What they're talking about is things from in a normative sense. There's a inherent value judgment, and it's the same conversations with regards to our differences and disagreements in nutrition are the same differences and conflated arguments that we have with regards to training.
Right.
And they're entirely superficial, and people make money by conflating those differences. Right. Because the bigger the difference, the bigger you can convince people that the differences, that separate, one particular way of eating or training from another particular way of eating or training. If you can cast, doubt and suspicion and try to undermine that other way of eating and training, you can, enlist more people to follow you. It's completely... It undermines all of our collective efforts, and it's really frustrating in this sense because it's really just like trench warfare. It's really just these two separate camps digging trenches, and they're shooting at each other from across the field, and nothing's accomplished. No ground is won or lost. But in this no man's land between is a lot of understanding if someone is just willing to put aside their arms in a sense, and just try and meet each other halfway. And what flexible dieting is, what we're talking about is, yes, I mean, it's not a license to eat like shit.
Not at all.
And Krissy is not defending from a health conscious standpoint the eating of fast food or donuts as purely the staples of your diet.
Right.
It depends. There's from a utilitarian aspect, what is your goal? If your goal is purely aesthetics, you can get away with eating like shit. Yeah. You can get away with eating fast food and donuts. If your goal is purely, I want to look good.
Right.
You will not be healthy.
You happy.
You will not be adding years to your life, and you will probably not be a great performer in whatever sport you choose. But you're going to look the part. But if that's your goal, if that's your only real concern, it's not my place to judge, even if that doesn't reflect my values, in a sense. And you know, on the flip side, nor does you know, at me as a professional athlete or someone who values performance above aesthetics, eating a donut, eating ice cream on occasion isn't contrary to that. It's not injurious to my long term aims.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're looking at, you know, the utility of food. You know, it's protein, it's carbs, it's fat. It's how do these individual components of what I'm eating help me in my long term goals? But then you know, what's often neglected is that psychological element.
Exactly.
Because we think about, okay, well, you follow this diet and the psychological reward is later. You follow this 1,500 calorie restricted diet, and in 6 months' time you're gonna have the body you want, and then you'll be happy. So your happiness always lies beyond the horizon of your expectations. You're constantly chasing this constantly retreating horizon, and you're denying yourself just simple pleasure. You're denying yourself the opportunity. Hey, hey, Michael Cagney is in town, and we live in New York City. We live in this great culinary city, but I can't have that donut.
Right.
I have to forego dessert after dinner because it's not a part of my diet, and I'm depriving myself of the real, tangible experiences in life, and that is fucked up.
Yeah.
That is fucked up, because life is that in 6 months' time, you're not going to look exactly like how you want to. And in that interim, you will have missed out on these opportunities to share real, meaningful experiences with people. And I'm probably going way off the rails at this point, but I read all these comments, and I read all of these from a more objective point of view, and it's ludicrous.
Right.
It's ludicrous that people would attack Krissy, the author, or attack the flexible dieting method, because it encourages people, it tells people it's okay for you to enjoy that donut or that ice cream or that food that is not on the other approved foods list, that is not paleo or zone friendly, and you can do so without guilt, without concern that your long-term goals are going to be derailed or undermined because you want to be human.
Right. And it's the opposite of a fad diet, and using your war example, like it has no place in the war, right? You're taking bits and pieces from any diet, bring them together, and really it's just it's a lifestyle thing. It comes down to a lifestyle thing, and that's what really draws me to it, because that's like how I try to live my entire life. Tim Ferriss talks about it from a work and retirement standpoint, right? You're hoping that when you turn 60, 70, 80 years old, that there's this pot of gold at the end of it for you, which doesn't usually happen anymore, but you're delaying happiness. But why not just enjoy the hell out of the moment, right?
Yeah.
These are, I say these, but yeah, just live in the moment, enjoy the process, and don't deny yourself those things, because that's how it's always been done.
Right.
Right.
And another thing is you don't always have to have the damn donut. There's days where I don't want ice cream or donuts, so I don't eat them.
We went about 3 weeks without having a donut
because I just didn't want it.
Right.
It's one of those things where you just kind of it's totally a mood thing. And when there's friends in town and we're around people, or when we're doing donuts and deadlift stuff, we want to, or when we're out of town, we're going to donut shops.
We would be shitty friends if we didn't take Mike.
Yes.
And it's you don't know. I'm not saying like, oh, eat donuts pre and post workout. No, I just really happen to enjoy them, and that's what I choose. Sometimes I don't want donuts. Sometimes I have a little bit of ice cream at night. Sometimes I have neither. But another thing a lot of women say to me, I mean, it's shocking how many women have disordered eating habits or have suffered from ED. And a lot of women will say to me, like, well, how can you just have 1 or 2 donuts? I would eat the whole box. Mm-hmm. Not when you deprive yourself of them. And these women say, oh, I haven't had a donut in 2 years. I would eat a whole box right now. Yeah, because you have deprived yourself for so long. So, of course, you're going to binge. And so I tell, if there's a day, and I tell women this all the time, if there's a day you're having a shitty day, and you just say to yourself, like, I just want a donut right now. And these are the women who are on really restrictive meal plans for prolonged periods of time, and they're exhausted and they're tired and they're moody and they have severe cravings that they're not giving into. And they get to the point where they just had enough. And I tell people, if the donut's gonna save you from a binge or overeating, just having even half one, have the damn donut instead of something else.
Right.
And these women go so long and then they binge. And there was one day where I posted something on Facebook about I think I even mentioned it in the book about, you know, what the calories and the makeup of an apple and peanut butter look like compared to a donut.
Oh God, that was that started.
And I posted about that on Facebook one day, and people just ripped into me like, I can't believe you're telling people to eat a donut instead of. And I said, I'm not telling anybody to choose a donut over something micronutrient rich. Like obviously the apple and the peanut butter are very micronutrient rich, and they're from a health standpoint. It's a lot healthier for you than obviously a donut. There's not a rich micronutrient profile to a donut. And I said if you want the donut that day, eat the damn donut, because the next couple days you're gonna be on, you know, you give into that little bit of craving, you don't overdo it, then you're on track for a few days. You just let yourself have the donut, you enjoy the donut, and you're good. Opposed to saying like, oh, I really want that donut today, but I'm not gonna do it. And then that keeps building and building and building, and that's what turns into binge eating, the constant restriction that so I don't know.
Eats away.
Another thing with me is, I mean, I give a very basic rundown of my story in the second chapter of that book. And my eating was just, I was so restrictive, and I would avoid people, anything, because I didn't want to be put in the position to fall off my insanely strict 1,000-calorie diet. It would get to the point where I'd be so miserable. I would go to the grocery store and spend like $150 on food and eat it all, and just binge so hard and then hate myself for it. Whereas like in retrospect now, I think back, like if I would have just indulged a little bit every other day, it wouldn't have hurt me at all whatsoever, and I probably would have, you know, been a lot well off psychologically and physically. So it's hard with women, you know. It's weird how many times I see comments on my Instagram being like, oh, I can never eat that. I can't eat that. And saying you can't eat something with no grounds as to why you can't, it's just unhealthy. And nobody should be eating a plethora of sugar, you know, tons of just, I mean, obviously there's times when we go a little overboard, we don't fucking feel good. And given that we're both athletes, we want to feel good. And, you know, we eat right, and we enjoy our donuts in moderation, and we enjoy our time we get to spend with our friends, because we're busy people. We don't get to see you very often. So we've enjoyed the past week with you. You know, we've eaten well for the most part.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't know. I think that, I mean, me personally, and I'm by no means qualified to help anybody with an eating disorder. I never got professional help with mine, which is something I do kind of regret, because it went on for a long time, and it's something I definitely still deal with and struggle with. There's times when I eat too much and I don't feel good, and I get like, you know how I get?
Kind of like a company guilt.
Yeah, but not guilt that, it's weird. It's not food guilt like I used to get anymore. It's like, oh, I didn't manage my caloric intake better today. I should have eaten more calories early on, so because what I start to do is like I don't like depriving myself or under eating, because I notice it.
It's almost like, it's more like taking accountability for...
Right. I should have, and there's times when we get to the end of the day and I'm just eating a ton of food to get all my calories in, and it's guilt that I should have been more on top of my nutrition, especially since I know how to be. Not guilt of what I ate, but it's just guilt of better nutrient timing or better, meal frequency or anything like that. So I never got professional help with my eating disorder, which is something I do kind of regret. And I think I could probably benefit from it still now, because I do have issues still, and I always will. You never get cured of an eating disorder. You just get better at learning how to manage it. You learn how to cope with it. So flexible dieting really saved me and saved my relationship with food and my self-image a lot, because when I quit demanding perfection from my diet, I quit demanding perfection in my physique. And I kind of said, this is how I want to eat, and this is the body I've been given, and I have so many ways to do what I want with it from a performance and an aesthetic standpoint. And now I'm just comfortable with myself, and I really think a lot of that stems from being flexible with my nutrition and focusing on performance.
That's what Krissy just mentioned. She allowed herself, a little more. She didn't demand perfection in her diet, and she, over time demanded less perfection from her physique. And I think that theme, because I've experienced it in my own life as well. This is just a round table of disordered people to recovering addicts and someone with bipolar type 2 disorder. In my own life, CrossFit for me became at times something that substitution effect we talked about, where my pathologies and my more obsessive behavior began to manifest themselves through training. But as I matured and as I grew older and began to manage my own well-being better, CrossFit was something that I noticed that as I mastered myself in the gym, that lent itself to mastery outside the gym. As I began to see improvement in, with regards to my training, I began to see improvement elsewhere in my life just by applying the same diligence and effort and and patience. I don't go into the gym expecting every day. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not always true, but I don't go into the gym expecting to master a skill I've never attempted before on the first day. Over time, I developed proficiency, and applying those same lessons to my life. Not expecting perfection at the first attempt, but like we talked about earlier, good decisions compound themselves. Success compounds success, and good decisions and positive consequences tend to aggregate over time. And over time, I had a lot more stability and more control over my life, and I think that's something that is kind of obliquely touched on when we talk about nutrition or CrossFit, and people seeing success in CrossFit or people seeing success with flexible diet is that psychological element. And Mike, I think you have something a lot to contribute about this, because you and I have had similar experience with regards to CrossFit being at once a really positive influence and at times a not so positive influence. Is that approach where self mastery in CrossFit and training lends itself to kind of continued growth in mastery in other facets of your life, provided that you have a balanced and reasonable approach to your progress.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when originally it was I started CrossFit, I guess 2 months into sobriety, and I did it for a little bit, had a little slip up, and then got back into it maybe September of 2009, and I was smoking a pack a day again, and I had to make a decision because it hurt too bad. My lungs hurt too bad to do both smoking and CrossFit, and
We've all been there.
Yes,
tough.
And at first it kept my mind off of the chaos in my head like nothing else, right? That and working with other alcoholics, that was really a godsend for me, just service work in general. But over time, I lost that balance, and as I think that's how you and I started to become close, because you were going through the same type of thing. But I lost that balance with serving others and focusing on relationships, family, that kind of thing, and my the most important thing in my life became CrossFit, and my self-worth was more based on my performance. And it never got nearly as bad as it did in 2009. But it's just been a constant, not even really a roller coaster, just a yin and yang, and I'm constantly trying to rebalance my life. And as I'm told, life is a constant process of that. And hopefully those peaks and valleys are getting less now, less extreme.
Yeah, it's a constant recalibration, and it's not healthy to become so singularly fixated on competitive CrossFit at the expense and exclusion of everything else that's valuable in your life. But I think it's indicative of your growth and my growth that you're able to recognize that, okay, this isn't really tenable in the long term. This may be, if you have aspirations to go to the games, some things are going to have to be put on the back burner or kind of recede in terms of their importance or even the attention like you talked about. You have a finite amount of energy and time to allocate to certain things. If you want to be the best at a particular sport, that's going to take time and dedication. But as you grow, as you mature, it's those things that we are so singularly fixated on can become really not conducive to our long-term happiness. When you are a two-time champion, is a third time on the podium going to make you any happier or contribute to your lifetime happiness more? I would
have liked the third one.
We would like third, but at the same time, what are the opportunity costs of that third? What would you have presumably missed out on in the pursuit of that third?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that third isn't perhaps something down the road. He's still really well conditioned, ladies and gentlemen. Still looking sharp. Still looking sharp out there. But I think you could easily, take verbatim a transcript of what Mike said and substitute, bodybuilding or swimming, whatever it is, substitute any sport for CrossFit. And I think you're describing a lot of people's experiences with this really self-defeating, singular pursuit of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, I think a lot of people realize that that's not tenable.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to try and implement some type of balance. And I think what flexible dieting does, especially with the second book, that I don't think neither zone or paleo or any of the real kind of lifestyle or diet fads that were really popular within the CrossFit community, in a broader sense, really addressed was the intrinsically human element, that psychological element. So we talk about where everything, again, in a normative sense, your ideal diet is this. This is what you should eat as a descendant of your Paleolithic ancestors. This is what you were genetically designed to eat. So any derivation from that is a deviation from ideal. And a deviation from ideal is a deviation from you are falling short. Same with zone. When it's become so, it's weighing and measuring. If you inaccurately weigh or measure, are
scales
higher.
Aren't perfect.
Scales aren't perfect.
Scales fail every day.
But we see that as a measure of yourself. Right? If I'm not measuring up in this respect, and so if our psychological feeds the physical, and there's this kind of feedback mechanism that's in place, if we come up short in the physical, we find ourselves deficient in the psychological. If we're deficient psychologically, we find ourselves deficient in the physical. And I think if we can just reconcile those issues with regards to our diet, it's something that usually causes so much stress and so much anxiety and so much disagreement and so much frustration in our lives, and say, listen, this doesn't need to be A, that complex, or B, that frustrating or futile, that I can actually manage my lifestyle and that my diet can respond to the constantly changing demands and circumstances of my life, and I can still retain that sense of control, is incredibly liberating. It's incredibly liberating. So for me, I have to think that in terms of our long-term health, in terms of our long-term psychological health, it has to be better for us in the long term to periodically indulge in that pastry or that donut, that to constantly deny ourselves those things that maybe add to our happiness, that make us human, and just make us miserable. Because if you're miserable, you're not going to pursue the things that you love with any real fervor or desire or enthusiasm. And this is me, applauding my girlfriend, not as her boyfriend, but as someone who has struggled with those psychological issues before, and I see the benefit, and I see the good things it does for people who otherwise have just been made miserable, whose efforts have really been frustrated by their attempts at weight loss in the past, and flexible dieting is a way for them to build some stability and control and autonomy, and have those small successes that aggregate and build over time, which I think is absolutely invaluable for people who live at the extremes, as we all do to some respect.
Word. That got deep.
Mad deep.
Yeah, really deep.
Mad deep.
Last thing, we're going to wrap it up in a second. In the near future, what are you pumped up about in your life?
Traveling with this one.
Word.
Traveling.
What are you going to be traveling for?
Fun.
Cool.
For love.
All right, nice terse responses. We're going to be going to Europe.
Nice.
I've never been outside the continental U.S. I think Tijuana is really just...
I took you to Iceland.
That's true. I did not forget about that, but I was remembering a time before her. Tijuana is like just really southern San Diego. But yeah, we've explored Iceland, and now we're going to be going a little bit further east and exploring the mainland.
Awesome.
Continental Europe.
You going to be doing some seminars, nutrition seminars?
No, we were thinking about doing some in Croatia, but I told you I want it to be strictly vacation.
Fun. Awesome.
I'm going to Hawaii in April, and that was supposed to be strictly vacation, but my travel partner is also the most insane human being on the planet, or as I like to call him, Dad. So he lost his damn mind and basically told me he wasn't coming to Hawaii anymore, so I turned Hawaii into a road trip, and I'm doing seminars there.
Cool.
So, and then I got a couple powerlifting meets coming up.
Powerlift.
Sweet.
3.
When's your first one?
Got one in 2 weeks. May 20. What month is it? It's March.
It is
March 29th. I got one late April, and then I've got one in July. Back to back to back.
Hell yeah. So where can we watch you powerlift?
Oh, I don't know if you can watch.
You know what I'll do is I'll take videos and post them on the internet.
Thank you.
With my special commentary.
I'm real weird about performance. I'm not a fan of people watching me lift. It's definitely my weakness when I'm in the gym and I have my music in my ears and it's just me or one of these two. I'm in the zone and I can focus. When I start getting all the external distractions that are involved with the meet, the adrenaline kicks in at first, and then you have one bad lift, and then it's just all downhill. So my last meet, I'm proud of myself for what I did, and I know I walked away with a medal, and I know I walked away with second place, and that was fun and all. But what I realized is what's more important to me is going 9 for 9, or hitting all my attempts, or hitting PRs. Right. I mean, I'm not in this to compete against anyone else. I'm in this kind of to compete against myself. So last meet definitely learned a lot. So hopefully I can apply that to these upcoming ones. I'm definitely not a performer. We realize that.
I don't know about that. That's another skill that can be honed.
Oh, she performs.
Amen, brother.
Amen, brother. Amen.
All right, well, thank you for doing this late at night, even though you would like to be asleep. Your book is the best nutrition book I've ever read. I think it is. Big
statement coming from you. Thank you.
It is,
he reads books too, so that's
he's smart. Smart and handsome and single, ladies.
Oh, get at him on Tinder.
Would.
Swipe to the right if you come across this gentleman.
Yes.
Thank you. So get the book. Read the first one.
Well, where can they get the book?
No, don't read the first one.
Never mind the first one.
Don't even.
Don't even.
Just go straight to the second one at ChrissyMayCagney.com.
ChrissyMayCagney.com.
Donutsanddeadlifts.com. Can I get it there?
No, but that actually isn't a bad idea.
Wow, look at you.
You can find that there soon.
Maybe, I don't know. I try to really distance myself from Donuts and Deadlifts because I want it to be about the brand, and that's why I never really post pictures of myself or mention myself. Kind of, I don't know, trying to separate my own personal stuff. I'm actually trying to get rid of my own personal stuff and just have the damn book and Donuts and Deadlifts, and that's it. But people...
Well, when Wu-Tang keeps posting pictures of your
ass, how am I ever tired?
That makes it tough. But Krissy Gumroad, is that
that's linked to my website.
So go to ChrissyMayCagney.com, follow her at ChrissyMayCagney on Instagram.
Across the board.
Yes.
Seminars upcoming, you'll be able to find out some information.
Yeah, I got some seminars coming up. Plan to have quite a few more scheduled by the end of the year if you want to come hear me talk more in depth about nutrition.
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do.
And we should all stay tuned for continued collaborations with the lovely Krissy May and brUTE Strength.
Strength.
brute strength.
And
There's
these-
some big things in the.
And there's some big things in the works with these sprinkles in my mouth.
Yes, indeed.
Where can they follow you? At
At Dan Candero.
Yes.
Yes.
Everyone thinks my boyfriend's name's Dan.
It isn't.
Definitely not.
It's Drew.
Someone called you Dave the other day.
As in Drew Hill, R-U umlaut. I don't think that umlaut. It's also not that. It's just Drew, like Drew a picture. At D Canavero, if you can spell that last name, I hear it the first time, good for you. And then on the internet in general, I guess.
Google you.
Google me. It can't be Facebook. I still don't have an athlete page.
Google images.
Yes, indeed.
Lots
And
of
then-
crop tops and lifting heavy weights.
Indeed.
And you can find us at brUTE.strength on Instagram, brUTE_strength_ on Twitter. I have one tweet. No likes on that tweet yet. I'm hoping.
No
to
likes.
get a couple.
Oh, we're gonna
Hey,
get
What do you call
like
it?
that
Star
real quick.
favorites? Yeah.
Don't like that real quick.
And then that's about it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, babe. I'm
And
gonna say thank you later
You're
on.
welcome so much.
You're welcome. All right, brute shooters.
Boom.
Boom.